It is a rare YouTube exclusive recording video from Jordan and I. It is a lovely Saturday afternoon, probably later once everybody sees this. Jordan, it is championship Saturday for college football after a couple of the group of five championships yesterday. We might talk about that at a different time because I do want to talk about some of that stuff at a different time. But today we are here to discuss a topic that I know I have personally said I'm tired of for different reasons, but it's a big topic, and that is Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Jordan, if you're an NFL quarterback, it is always going to be a polarizing position unless you are the top of the top. And even then, people are always going to question you until you win a Super Bowl. I think you and I have mostly been fair towards Tua during the time we've done this podcast.
More than a lot of people.
More than a lot of people. I'd say we are mostly pro Tua. But as we talked about on our last live, last weekend against the Saints, I felt Tua was ultimately a guy who was costing us in a game that should have been a blowout. And when you look at Tua's stats this year, everybody talks about he's leading the league in interceptions. He has 17 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. But if I count it right, he only has 5 games this year where he's thrown over 200 yards. Now, for all of Tua's weaknesses and deficiencies as a player from a physical standpoint, I don't see someone who is physically limited, or rather, I don't see someone whose play this year is mostly because of the injuries he has sustained. A lot of people talk about concussions. I don't see a concussion issue right now. No. A lot of people are talking about him dropping his trainer, Nick Hicks. He did that after the 2023 season, I believe. So he's been without Nick Hicks and performed for 2 years. So I don't put it there. I could be wrong here, but I was looking this up. I believe last year he worked with John Beck, who is known as a very good quarterback coach, despite his deficiencies, ironically, as a Miami Dolphins quarterback.
Yeah, I feel like right when I saw that start to come out that Tua was working with John Beck, I was like, oh, Dolphin fans are going to love that one.
Yeah. But Beck is one of the best. His, what is it, the 3D QB, I think it's called. They work with everybody. I know Tua fired or supposedly fired his QB coach. I don't know if he's still with Beck or not. But I've heard people say he fired his QB coach this offseason, which if he did, that would mean he is no longer working with Beck. And he also announced during the season that he did fire his agent, which doesn't really do much from an on-field standpoint. But Jordan, when I look at Tua, I see a guy who's overthinking. I see a guy who's not trusting himself. What are you seeing, and what does he need to work on? Or is it salvageable for him?
So I think you have to look at it from a couple different perspectives. I think you have to look at it from a Tua perspective by himself and is Mike McDaniel doing everything he can to help Tua point of view. And I think from that latter point of view, from 2022 to 2024, Tua completed about 73% of his passes to the middle intermediate part of the field. And we're talking middle of the field, right over the middle, just past where you would see the front 7, 73% in that area of the field. And this year particularly, he's been under 50%. Now that at a baseline, you're like, oh, wow, Tua's got to be better at those throws. To me, it's that defenses have adjusted to what the Dolphins do offensively. And it's to Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, Bobby Slowick, and whoever else, Darrell Bevel, whoever else is in that quarterback room and in those offensive meetings to kind of find ways for this offense and for Tua to be successful with that part of the game being taken away. And I think that last part I just mentioned is also something that might be hurting Tua a little bit, and that is that there are too many cooks in the offensive kitchen. Okay? You have all of those guys that I just named, plus probably a couple assistants and a couple other people. Okay. Then you have Tua switching quarterback coaches, switching places he works out, all that. So there are a lot of voices coming to Tua with probably differing opinions, and not to mention probably the opinions he gets and things he hears in his personal life too. So one thing I would look for as we move forward, if this is salvageable, is to kind of lower the voices and lower the amount of voices that Tua is listening to, and have a very concise plan, particularly between Tua and Mike McDaniel. And I think simply from a play calling standpoint, that needs to change. From the other standpoint, which is Tua as a quarterback, and not Tua the mind games, Tua the quarterback. There were a lot of people talking about Tua's balance. Okay, his footwork has, whether it's that it's changed or he's being lazy with it. I've seen both, and I think that if you're talking lazy, you're kind of going back into that other category. So I'll just say that his footwork is off. So he needs to really dig in on that, because I think that'll help the pocket presence as well, which I know a lot of people talk about being a concern for Tua. His decision-making, obviously that leads to the interceptions, but I think part of that is also the footwork. I think if you look at a footwork perspective, if we went and broke down every single one of his interceptions, I bet if he were simply to work on that, that number would get a little bit lower. Again, McDaniel. And then the other thing, which there's been nothing public, and you talk about not wanting to talk about injuries and stuff like that. I'm wondering about Tua's hip strength. Okay. Mm-hmm. Tua had the injury, obviously in college. That was a very brutal injury to his hip. And there have been a lot of, over the last couple of years, even when Tua was successful, people always talk about the velocity behind his throws. And I don't think Tua is ever going to be a quarterback that really, like a Brett Favre, that's going to throw a fastball at somebody. But I definitely think there's something to him needing to improve that hip strength and that torque, so that he's not floating as many passes or not as many underthrows. And when you take that, not being able to really drive, not really being able to get that twist in his hips, plus the footwork, I mean, that to me is more of the disaster that you've seen this year from Tua.
Yeah. And let me just add something you said. When you said, I don't want to talk about injuries specifically, I don't see, to me personally, a lot of his mistakes to me are not because of the injury. Told you when we did our live stream on Thursday, when I was watching Tua against the Saints, I thought he was moving as well as I've seen him move this year. But I don't think the concussions, specifically concussions, I don't think that's the issue. And something I briefly mentioned on Thursday I do want to talk about, a lot of the sacks Tua is taking this year, he is actually extending the play, or he has time. The issue I see is he doesn't trust what to do next, which is the issue. And that goes to your point of too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe. I think for some people, it may be easy to point to this. I don't think this has been discussed a lot. But the one coach we added on the offensive side is Bobby Slowick, who you and I praised as a good hire. But what input does Bobby have that is affecting Tua, if any? I'm not blaming him, but that's the only thing that's really changed from a Dolphins standpoint, I believe, unless you have someone to correct me on that.
I think that's the only change.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because the Dolphins already last year, it felt like had a little bit of a big offensive staff and a lot of guys, especially working with that position. And they added a guy like Slowick, but he didn't replace anybody. It was just an add to the room. So, but I definitely think it's going to be interesting to see the way we kind of change what that looks like this offseason.
Yeah. But to go to what I was saying is, like, you'll see him have time. And I know people are like, oh, we need someone to scramble. Guys, Josh Allen, 1 in a million. Lamar Jackson, 1 in a million. I know it's weird to say it because they're different people, but that's beside the point. Patrick Mahomes does what he does. Caleb Williams does what he does. Those are not the norm. What you need is someone who is smart with the ball, knows when to get rid of it, knows when to extend the play, knows when to check it down. And I do think Tua is getting stuck in way too many minds this year. And I think there were a couple plays this past week that emphasize that. The pick, which he, like I said, I know Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith and everybody said they want him going deep. they want to do the, pardon my French, they want to do the fuck it and chuck it kind of thing, where
I don't think that was French.
Fair enough, but they want him to take shots. But the interception to Waddle didn't even look at the field to me. Waddle wasn't even open, and it's one of those things where it's like, look, you want to go deep and hope something happens. You need to give your wide receiver a chance to make a play, and Waddle had no chance. And I believe you pointed this out on Discord. Waller was open beneath, and it would have been a big play either way, just because
I don't think I pointed it out on Discord, but I definitely pointed it out at the stadium.
Fair enough. But so there's that. The other thing I want to point out, and I think this ended up being a drop. I forget who it was to, but Tua rolled out, had time, was going to his left. He had, I forget who the check down was, but he had the check down open for a while. And all we needed was a first down, and it would have been a short play. That would have gotten yak because there was just no one around him. He had it open. He didn't look. He then, I believe it was the play, he tried to force it to Julian Hill. I might be mixing the plays up, but it's one of those. And the throw was behind the guy. So, and we end up having to punt. And I think that goes to an issue that Tua has had basically his whole career, where he likes to take risks. And I think from a coaching standpoint, something we never got, it's weird to say this, we wanted Mike to empower Tua, which he has, but you also need a head coach that can reel in an aggressive quarterback. And I don't think from a organizational standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, we've done a good job reeling Tua in. And while Waddle's been great and Tyreek's absent, and Malik has proven himself to be a solid number 3, mainly in the slot and on screens, we don't really have the reliable targets we have had in the past where you could extend it and you would have multiple people get open. Like even to do like River Craycraft is a guy we'll mention, like aside from the super fan on Twitter who I love, shout out to him. But he aside from like he's just a guy, but he would get open. He would be a reliable guy who would just sit in the open spaces in the zone defense, and you could just rely on to make an easy catch. It just doesn't feel like we have that right now. And as good as I think Mike McDaniel has been with play calling this year, one complaint I've had, and I still do think, is we don't always do a good job of manufacturing easy throws that are not screens. And I do think from a organizational coaching standpoint, this is the year where it finally kind of caught up to us, which does also go into the point where you need to get those bigger, more physical receivers into the team.
Yeah, and there are a couple points you just made in what you said that I want to touch on, but that last point you made is why every single mock draft you and I do from right now, which is December 6th until April, is probably going to have one, if not two, bigger body receivers in the draft. And I think that aspect of it is something that's very easy to clean up, especially with moving on from Tyreek. That other receiver on the other side of Waddle needs to be able to make contested catches. And I think that's coming. But there were two things that you mentioned. The first one was at the very beginning where you talked about the type of quarterback that Tua is. Okay. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not a Drake May. He's not one of those guys that's going to get things done with his legs. But being that he's not a guy that's going to get things done with his legs, he can't have a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Mm-hmm. He can't have, going into the latter part of the season, 17 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. That's unacceptable. He needs to be a lot more of a game manager if he's going to be that type of guy. If he's not going to have athleticism, he needs to be more accurate than he's currently being right now. And I think the other part, which isn't, I don't think, because we don't know, we're not on the team, all of this is speculation and our point of view from watching. There are a lot of plays, and it's been less as of late, more earlier in the season. There were a lot of plays. You talk about the one in the Saints where Tua rolled out to his left and threw it behind Julian Hill. There were a lot of plays in which Tua has rolled out right and been asked to roll out right and throw against his body. And I know that you can't, it's not realistic to say, oh, we just need to always roll Tua out one way. He needs to be going to his left. No, but it seemed like earlier in the year that there were more plays that Tua was rolling out against his body. And when we talked about that lack of torque, that lack of moving mobility, that hip area that we've been focusing on a little bit here, when he's rolling out to the right and being asked to really turn and throw, to me, that's when Tua has really struggled. And that's something I'd like to see him work a lot on this offseason, is throwing that opposite way. And I'd also like to see McDaniel, if you're going to have a lefty quarterback, build more things into the playbook and more actions into the playbook that have him rolling out in the correct direction.
Yep. So just going over a list of stuff we have. Next question we have to talk about, and we kind of talked about this on Thursday, is if Tua will be on the roster in 2026. From a cap standpoint, it's very hard not to see him on the roster. It is a big hit. Am I at the point where I would say you take the hit no matter what? No. If he keeps playing like he did last week, absolutely. You just kind of have to figure out how to work with it. And the one question I hear everybody say is, well, if you cut Tua, who's better than him? If you do this, well, let's be honest. If he plays like he did last week and how he's honestly played the last 2 months outside of the Falcons game, you can get that kind of production from almost any other quarterback. So I think he's back now because it's just too hard not to. But the question people will have is, oh, who's the quarterback? I think you and I discussed it on Thursday too. You draft a mid-round guy, you have them compete with Quinn Ewers. You try and see if you have a diamond in a rough where you can at least be competitive. I'm not saying that's a lot of people say, well, then you're admitting you're tanking and tanking doesn't work. Maybe. What you're doing is you're basically saying, hey, can Mike McDaniel actually do something with someone that's not Tua? Because that is now the discussion you hear all the time is, oh, Tua is holding McDaniel's offense back because he can't take a hit or because he's physically limited. So that is the point of saying, hey, Mike, go build an offense without Tua. So if Tua's not here, I think you're looking at a mid-round rookie versus Ewers to see if you can get anything out of him. And then if you can't, which you probably wouldn't, you look at a quarterback in 2027. But I do think Tua ultimately will be here because I don't think, for as bad as he's been the last couple weeks, last couple months, I don't think he is that bad. So, yeah.
I think it's a couple fold. I think it's three major questions. And I'll go over the three questions first, and then I'll dive a little deeper into each of them. I think the first question is, does Mike McDaniel, and that can answer this question, does he think that he can win with Tua? That's number one. Number two is, if that answer is no, 2 and 3 come into play. 2 being, what do we do about the money? And 3 is, who is a guy that Mike McDaniel thinks he can win with in 2026? Okay. Not what prospect does he think, and I'll talk about why. It's not what prospect does he think he can develop in 3 to 4 years. It's, does he think there's a quarterback out there that he can win with in 2026, period. Okay. If that answer is no, because I'm looking at the guys, teams with, or players with team options, or players that are going to be free agents that have started a game this year, are Jordan Love, who's not going anywhere. If he has, did he sign an extension yet?
He's signing an extension. So
okay. So he signed an extension. You have Geno Smith, who's not going to do better for us.
No.
You have Russell Wilson, who's not going to do better for us. You have Kirk Cousins, who's not going to do better for us. You have Justin Fields, who's not going to do better for us. Okay. Right. And then you look at that next list, you have guys like Jameis, Jacoby Brissett, and Gardner Minshew. That's and Tyrod Taylor. That's that next list of 4 guys. And
I think
love Jameis.
I think Minshew and Winston would be fun. Taylor, I think, would be, you'd get a respectable.
So
offense.
You're talking about fun. You're talking about respectable. Okay. And yes, while that's true, I don't know if Mike, with his job on the line, wants to and is ready to make that bet of let's get rid of Tua, get what we can get, and go with Jameis or Brissett or Minshew or Tyrod Taylor. Okay. Now that's question 3. And the reason I talk about how it doesn't matter if you want to draft somebody or not is if you're not drafting somebody in round 1, or even if you do draft somebody in round 1, I would assume that because of the dynamics of the team, if we get to the point where Mike McDaniel wants, and whoever the new GM is, if they want to take a quarterback in round 1, I expect Tua to get moved, because I don't think that Tua mentally, I'll call a spade, I don't think he's mentally tough enough to be in a battle with a first round pick in this fan base, because this fan base is going to want the first round pick to start. Okay.
Yeah.
I think
I apologize. Just to interrupt you real quick too. If we get to that point, Tua can't be on the team next year.
Correct. No,
like even without mentally, he can't, because if we're at that point, again, just to kind of go back to what I said earlier, if Tua plays the rest of the season like he did versus the Saints, there's no way he can come back to the team because the fan base would not accept it.
Yeah. So you look at it from that perspective, and that's only if you take a first-round quarterback. If you take a first-round quarterback, then it's the Jameis, it's the Gardner Minshew, it's the Tyrod Taylor. One of those guys will likely be on the team to either start and pass it along like a Jackson Dart situation, or those guys would back up that rookie quarterback. If you're taking a guy in round 3, in round 4, you're talking a guy like Jaden Maiava from USC. I definitely butchered that. You're talking about a Cade Klubnik. I know, but I'm just saying, if you're talking about that tier, you're talking about a Sawyer Robertson. Okay, you're talking about a middle of the road quarterback that we're drafting. Then you can have Tua come back if you feel that Tua, essentially on a 1-year deal, is better and knows this offense better than one of those other veteran quarterbacks I named. So you kind of have 3 options. It's Tua by himself, it's Tua with a 3rd or 4th round pick, or it's a 1st round pick with a Jameis, Gardner Minshew, Tyrod Taylor type player. Yeah. What path is the best to take? Like you said, I think these next 5 weeks are going to be a big deciding factor on that, because if he puts up a stinker against the Jets, and we have 4 tough games against 4 playoff teams to finish the season, other than the Bengals, who have gotten hot and could possibly make some noise in that division. And if they've had Burrow all year, they may very well be a playoff team. You have 4 teams there that if Tua puts up 4 stinkers or 5 stinkers, yeah, our mock drafts might look a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I think that as of today, as of December 6th, I think that it would be a lot of moving around to get off of Tua's contract and get somebody else. And I don't know if that's in the best interest of the team right now. But at the same time, like you said, and like I've said, there's a path that it gets to the point where we have to get rid of him.
Yeah. And let's be clear, that it's not just if Mike McDaniel says I can't win with Tua, it is if that relationship becomes unattainable. Like, I have seen a bunch of people say, oh, Mike still loves Tua. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm not saying that their relationship cannot be repaired. But if you listen to what both have said in the media this year, it's quite clear they're not as close as they once were. And that
what they're saying about each other and the words that they use, and they're not bashing each other, but the words that they're using are different than the words that they used 2 years ago.
Yep. And an example, and this isn't going to be bashing Tua for this, and I know I've done it a lot, so I just got to warn people I'm not bashing him for this. When you look at when Tua said players are not coming to these player-only meetings, what was Mike's response? That's outside of what's expected, so that's not my problem. Basically, that's paraphrasing. It also came out that Tua said, maybe it was Tua, it just came out where the players wanted coaches to attend these meetings. And Mike came out and again said, yeah, we have meetings with everybody. If they want us to attend extra meetings, like, that is their thing. So there is definitely a huge disconnect between the two, which if Tua's back next year, and I do, again, still as of right now, think he will be, they've got to repair that. So the next question when it comes to Tua, well, this is going to be two-phase for you. One, can Tua long-term salvage his future with this team? Or is it like, look, you're here for 1 year at most? And if it is, or even if it isn't, what would he, in your opinion, what would he have to do to repair this and salvage it? And to me, it's as simple as, and I've said this a couple times during our streams, whatever changes he made in the offseason, he's just got to make other changes. He's got to admit he made the wrong decisions this offseason. Chris Kaufman, a 3 yards per carry, had an interesting tweet during the game where he said in past years, every year, Tua would say, I have to work on this, I have to work on this, I have to work on this. His physique would change noticeably from year to year. The style of play he would change noticeably from year to year. This past year, what did he say? He was going to get away from everything. He was going to get away from the stress. So this is the 1 year he didn't specifically have something to work on. And I think this goes into the thing where it's like, well, I think at the end of the day, Tua's just got to admit he took the wrong approach this offseason. Now, if it had to do with mental health, you and I both will advocate for this. You got to take care of your mental health first. But from a job perspective, he made the wrong decisions, and he's got to own that.
Listen, the question that you asked is, can Tua salvage it with this fan base? The answer is yes. What this fan base wants more than anything, Brett, last weekend, I was at Dolphin Stadium at about 9:30 in the morning on a Sunday in the pouring rain against the 2-win New Orleans Saints. And that parking lot was packed with Dolphin fans. Packed. Okay. The Miami Dolphin fans, and I'm going to read this list in alphabetical order by first name. The Dolphin fans don't care if it's AJ Feely, Brian Greasy, Chad Henne, Chad Pennington, Cleo Lemon, Dante Culpepper, Gus Farrat, Jacoby Brissett, Jay Cutler, Jay Fiedler, Joey Harrington, John Beck, Josh Rosen, Matt Moore, Ray Lucas, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Tannehill, Skylar Thompson, Teddy Bridgewater, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyler Thigpen, Damon Heward, or Trent Green. Dolphin fans don't care. All we want is a quarterback that gives us a realistic chance to win a game. Dolphin fans put up with 7 years of Ryan Tannehill.
Yep.
Dolphin fans put up now with 6 years of Tua. And honestly, I don't speak for everybody, but I do speak for me when I say my opinion on Tua will change very quickly if he puts us in a position to win a game. But you can't do two things to people to Miami. You can't be a fraud and also be arrogant. That's a dangerous combination down here. Okay. Yeah. Your play can't be horseshit. And then on the other, and you're putting up the same numbers as Geno Smith. And then on the other side, you're calling out your teammates and kind of putting the blame on everybody else but yourself.
Yep. And I wasn't going to bash it, but yeah, that was always my problem, where it's like, I get it. You have to do it. Things are bad and things are going to be under a microscope. But those comments he made look worse because what was the next week? Cleveland. And he had his worst career game. So that when you already have a split opinion of you from the fan base, when you publicly call people out and then you're the worst player on the field, fans will notice that. Even if the comments, and I know there are friends that you and I have who say, oh, they took it out of proportion. Yeah, they probably did, but it's perception. Perception is reality. That is something people have to know. The perception is you called people out. You had a couple teammates come out and say, we wish he didn't do that. And then he has his worst game. Yeah, that is going to destroy your image with a fan base.
And so when you ask me, can Tua rebuild what he? Yeah, man. Like I, I'll be going to Dolphin games, and I've been going to Dolphin games and rooting and screaming and losing my voice with Tyler Thigpen at quarterback. Man, like we'll do it again, and it's not unsalvageable, but you got to put in the work, okay?
Yeah,
Because one thing is, I think, and I'm going to again speak for just myself, we've spent the last 13 seasons hoping for two quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill got 7 years, Tua's gotten 6 years.
yeah,
Next year will be Tua's 7th year in the NFL, which is the amount of time we gave Tannehill before we ended up moving on.
yeah. And let's be
If,
fair to Tua too. The highs were very high with Tua, but
yes,
what does the NFL stand for? Not for long.
if
It's in a moment.
Tua gets a 7th year, and if that 7th year does not lead to a playoff victory, I would assume that he's not getting an 8th year.
Yeah, no, I'd assume that too. And again, you were talking about Tua can, like, people will be back if we start winning. If Tua starts playing well, people will be back onto Tua bandwagon. Like, I'll speak for myself, but you can probably agree with this. If we end up making the playoffs, if we end up winning a game, if we go on a run and Tua turns it around, great. And I want nothing more than I've spent this week saying, I'm out on Tua. I don't care who the quarterback is anymore. I will root for him while he's on the team, but I will no longer defend him. Nothing would make me happier than for Tua to just have it all click again, go back to the 2022, 2023 Tua, and make me eat crow. That nothing would make me happier.
But he doesn't even need to get back to that. He needs to be somewhere in the middle of that and where he is right now. He just can't. He can even play. I don't think he could play like he's playing right now, but he doesn't even have to be good, man. You just humble yourself a little bit. Have a little grit to you. Okay. He comes off as arrogant. He comes off as soft, and he's not playing well. It's a perfect storm of negative right now. And I think that Dolphin fans are just fed up with it when we see organization after organization after organization. We beat the Broncos 70-20. Okay. I went with our producer and KD and a couple people. We went to Washington and watched us blow Washington out of the water and embarrass them when Washington fans were looking at us going, damn, we're jealous of what you guys are doing. Washington since has made an NFC championship game. Denver is currently one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. And we've gone like this with them. Okay. Yeah. I'm not asking to get back to that. I'm just asking us to get back to a toughness standpoint. And we watch, like I was saying before, organization after organization that has a quarterback not working. I don't care about the dead money. I don't care about anything. I'm going to move on and draft another one until I get a guy that works. And I think the Dolphins are sick of seeing other organizations have success doing that when we keep hoping for two quarterbacks to be successful in almost a 15-year span.
Yeah. The only thing I will disagree with you said, I don't think Tua comes off as arrogant. I think he comes off as lacking self-awareness with a lot of his comments. Now, conversation I've had with people, oh, Tua is the lightning rod. Yes. Oh, if Lamar said this, it wouldn't be a big deal. Lamar wouldn't say some of the stuff, but also, you know what the difference is? The Ravens tend to win consistently with Lamar Jackson. But different player, but you remember Cam Newton's early years, they were struggling to win. He was heavily criticized a lot for things he said in his press conferences.
The Oxford Dictionary definition of the word arrogant is the quality of having an exaggerated sense of one's own abilities. Would you say based off of the definition, the quality of having an exaggerated sense of one's own abilities, you think the Tua is arrogant?
I do not. I
I do.
think I will say this again. I think he's very. I think the soft comment you made earlier is a bit fair because I know he's tired of hearing criticism, but some of the snipes he's had at some people for his criticizing his play this year have made him look very foolish.
You
Like
know why?
when
You
he
know
said,
why he's not allowed to snap back at people that criticize him? You know why?
why is that?
Because he's making $55 million.
That at the end of the day is what it comes down to is when you're making $55 million, you don't get that leeway, especially
No.
if you're playing poorly. But like I think it was Omar, but other people said this too. He got mad that people were saying, "Oh, my turnovers don't come in bunches" or whatever. He said he was complaining that he was criticized for having turnovers in bunches. He immediately starts having turnovers in bunches. So, yeah, if you want to call it arrogance, fine. I get where you're coming from. I think we're just using we can say we're using synonyms, but I really think at times Tua does not think before he talks, and there are times he's very thoughtful with his words. Um, I do think he is a guy who will work hard and he wants to, but I just whatever he's doing just isn't working. And that where I will agree with you, he needs to humble himself and he has to flat out admit and say, this isn't the Dolphins not giving me an offensive line. This isn't mostly Mike putting me behind the eight ball with his play calling. This is no longer, it wasn't the beginning of the year, but this is no longer me having to bail the defense out. He has to look in the mirror, and I know every week to the point where I'm tired of saying this, but no, to answer what some people say, no, I don't expect him to say anything else. But every post game, oh, it starts with me. I got to be better. I know you're going to say it. I get why you're saying it. I don't want to hear it anymore. I want to see it. And at some point, he does. And there are some fans I know who do not want to hear this.
It's the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah. It's the boy who's cried wolf. He needs to look in the mirror and say, the decisions I made this offseason were the wrong ones. They didn't work. I've got to correct that. And even if the team's moved past it, he's going to have to stand up in front of the team and say, I was not a good enough leader this year. Or player. He's got to say that too. Like, he has got to stand up and say that. And that is not to say this season hasn't had good moments. Tua led us to what should have been a victory, come up from behind victory against the Chargers. Tua had 4 touchdowns against the Falcons. But there's just too many moments this year he's come up short. Or, like you said earlier, he makes dumb comments to the press that just come off as lacking self-awareness, arrogant as you put, which, yeah, now that I say it, that I can see where you're coming from with that too. He's just gotta, this is the first year I really think Tua's got to look and say, this is a me problem. This is not a Miami Dolphins problem.
And when you talk about, do interceptions come in bunches? Tua says they don't. It's not even them coming in bunches. When I directly, and this is as simplified, as simpleton as you can possibly get. Look at just our wins, okay? And break down our wins a little bit, okay? Against the Jets on Monday Night Football, Tua had 0 interceptions, and we get our first win of the season. Against Atlanta, Tua has 0 interceptions. We get our second win of the season. The only other game between week 1 and 8 that Tua didn't throw an interception is the Carolina game that we were up 17-0 and probably should have gotten a win. So through 8 weeks, we had 3 games that we should have won, and all 3 games Tua didn't have an interception. Now you might say to me, oh, Jordan, we should have won the New England game week 2. Tua threw a back-breaking interception at the end of the game, okay? Oh, Jordan, we should have won. It seems like his interceptions don't come in bunches. They come at the worst possible time, okay?
Yep.
Go forward a couple weeks, okay? We beat Buffalo. Tua has 2 picks. That's an outlier, okay? Then Tua has no picks and we beat Washington. Okay. Then you want to talk about the New Orleans game. He has the bad pick, and I'll say this, and we didn't say this on our live show, and we haven't said this for the first 40 minutes, but the truth is
he should have had 2 picks.
We are a Minkah Fitzpatrick pick 2 away from losing to the Saints.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get that pick 2, they recover the onside kick and they kick a field goal to beat us because they're not going for it on 4th down.
Yep. And Tua should have had that second interception too. They just didn't have enough to overturn it, and it was called incomplete on the field.
So again, you want to talk about, maybe his interceptions don't come in bunches. I mean, I can look at the game against the Chargers and the game against Cleveland and the game against Indy early in week 1, although according to college football, week 1 doesn't count. I think that you can look at all those, say, you know what, maybe those are a couple outliers. I'll give that to you. But there is a direct correlation between Tua having good game manager games and the Miami Dolphins winning football games. There's a direct correlation. And I think that Tua needs to kind of, when you talk about looking in the mirror and making that realization, the realization is, Tua, you don't have to be Superman.
Yeah.
You don't. You just can't kill us. Like, it doesn't need to be about you. None of this needs to be about you. You just need to be a solid game manager. The NFL is a weird sport where a lot of people overcomplicate it.
Yep.
Are there times where you have to go above and beyond and make late plays and all that? Yeah. But the Colts got to where they got in the first part of the season because they just didn't make back-breaking mistakes and capitalize when other teams did. And I would like to see the Dolphins move in that direction going forward, where we don't need to be superstars. Okay. We just need to be almost like your team, the University of Michigan, run the ball, play solid defense, capitalize on other teams' mistakes. You're going to be in the game late in games.
Yep. You just need to be able to make 1 or 2 plays a game, which unfortunately most of the season Tua hasn't been able to do. And I will reiterate, you and I both believe he absolutely can have a longer career with us, but he has got to make changes himself, which we've already talked about. Change what you did the offseason. You said don't be Superman. Honestly, just if the play's not there, just don't take a bad sack. Throw the ball away. I want to see you actually throw the ball away and not just get sacked standing there looking like an idiot outside the pocket for like 5 seconds. If he does that, that'll make me happy. But we can end this episode. What do you think the team and organization needs to do to help Tua get to where he needs to be?
I think they need to clear up the offensive staff and clean up kind of what that looks like. I think they need to design and look to design plays that really help lefty quarterbacks and get him going in that direction. I think we need to shore up the right tackle position. I think that was something that's complete bullshit that we have not done to this point is find a suitable right tackle. And I'm not counting on Austin Jackson being that guy. We need to clean that up and get a big-bodied receiver in here that will help to do what he needs to do. But I think different than that, what the organization needs to do is the new GM, Mike McDaniel, Brandon Shore, because he's more of the financial guy. They need to sit down and have a long conversation about, are we going to try to get off Tua right now, or are we going to commit to Tua? And if you're going to commit to Tua and you're going to take option B, then it needs to be full steam ahead, balls to the walls. How do we get Tua to be successful? If it's that earlier option of we're going to figure out that other option, then it can't be he lingers around the team, get rid of him, move on, and deal with the dead cap ramifications. But if he's staying, right tackle, play design, big-bodied receiver.
Yeah. Big-bodied receiver we're going to talk about so much, so I'm going to leave that. left unsaid because everybody knows how I feel about the big body wide receiver, and I agree with you. I do think part of the reason why our offensive line has started to get better this year, why the running game has taken off, why Julian Hill has become an elite blocking tight end this year, which you and I didn't think we would say last year, but he is. You just got to keep the blocking scheme simplified. I think we just try and do too much with the offensive line, with the movements, with the pooling, and I think that just overcomplicates things a bit. The biggest thing to me for Tua to be successful, and I know he's had the injuries, I know he's had the concussions. People keep saying you have a quarterback that can't take a hit. Don't baby him. If he literally cannot take a hit, find a way to void the contract, because that's just, if you're calling plays to not get someone in, with the worry that someone's getting injured or going to get injured, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. You're handicapping yourself. If Tua is going to get hurt, it's going to get hurt. The thing I will point out, literally aside from the injury where Jesse Javis got beat versus the Bills his second year, every injury Tua's had has been from him extending the play and just taking an unnecessary hit. So don't tell him not to like protect himself and not get hit. Just from his perspective, you got to tell him to just be more aware. But from a play calling perspective, don't worry about him getting hurt. Just don't. And if you're not worrying about that and you're opening up your playbook, it's either going to work or it's not, and then it's going to be clear. But if you're already putting yourself in a position where you have that built-in excuse, unfortunately, whether you think Tua can get back to where he was or not, you're already putting him in a bad position too. So yeah, just don't worry about the injury concern. And what my argument to anybody going forward is, they say, well, Tua can't get hit. Okay, cut him. Football's a contact sport. If you honestly don't think Tua can get hit and you're using that to defend his play, cut him. That's
I am of the belief, Brett, especially in 2025, that a quarterback should be a part of a football team.
Yes.
A quarterback, and it's funny, I was listening to, you talked about the group of five, Jake Retzlaff from Tulane last night after the game. They were interviewing him, and they said that the comment was something to the extent of his physical running style. And Retzlaff said, I want our running backs to know that I'm an extra member of their position group. Okay. And do I expect my quarterback to be a running back? No. But if you watch Baker Mayfield on any given day, he makes plays that just make you say, man, that's a tough motherfucker. Like guys like Josh Allen make plays on a daily basis that you go, God, that's a tough motherfucker. Even John Mateer for Oklahoma, like even somebody like that, to me, makes plays that you can say that. And I would love for the Dolphins to have a quarterback that is just, it's that Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's that Matt Moore school of, look, I might not have all the elite tools in the world, but at the end of the day, I'm a football player. I am tough. I am physical. And the guys on the other side are not going to outwork me. This is not a diva sport. Even Tom Brady is a motherfucker. Even Tom Brady is physical, is tough, is gritty, and he was the poster boy of the I don't even know what you want to call it, quarterback. Okay, Tua needs to toughen up. Toughen up, man. You're making $55 million. Spend some of it on some mental health training to toughen up and learn how to be a leader of a football team. Not a leader, not just a leader, not a leader of men, not a leader of life, not a leader of a workplace, a leader of a football team, a physical contact sport that is unlike anything else. You need to learn how to be a part of that. And a big part of that is physicality.
Yep. Honestly, that's a good little rant to end this video on. That was very nicely done, Jordan. But everybody, guys, we will be back later this week. We got some draft stuff planned. We'll definitely be talking about the Jets game. But see you then back live later in the week.
Peace.